Hello there and welcome to JJ Painting. I am JJ and Michaela's back, guys.
Hello.
She came back, yay! So we're doing another collab. So on her channel she's telling me all about singing and the actual really interesting stuff that goes with that. And it's actually genuinely quite fascinating.
If you're interested in biology, you might like it.
There's a lot of biology involved in singing.
Yeah, it's all about like the mechanics and the musculature and the different voice qualities.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
So today...
So you can figure out whether your soldiers speak with a more twangy accent or if they're more speech quality or if they sob. Indeed. Which one do they do? Let me know. Sorry.
Yes, indeed. So watch that video first if you want to get a sense of that. And some people who've been watching that video are going to come here, in which case, hi guys, how's it going? Now, what we're going to be doing, as you can tell from this, is we're going to be carrying on with our Age of Sigmarch. Cue music sting. Yeah! Whatever music stings in your head, I'm sure you can imagine it being better. Like, whatever I find in the YouTube free audio library, whatever you imagine, it's probably better. So we're just going to imagine. Anyway, so today, as you can tell from the title, I'm going to be drunkenly explaining Age of Sigmar. What we're going to be doing now is we're going to be talking about Age of Sigmar. We're going to be talking about the world that was, the world that is, and how it all fits together nice and neatly.
So not the world that will be?
No, not the world that will be, because we don't know what the world that will be is. The world that will be.
Will it have giant rats?
So, Michaela, how much do you know about Age of Sigmar?
There are giant rats, and there's a moon with uranium, and there's Kellogg's corn, magic guy, Nurgle, and sexy man, or woman, or non-binary human. I don't discriminate. Well, non-binary chaos god. And there's Sigmar. Sigmar brought back some heroes that your brother played as.
So yes, so we're going to start with the world that was, but only at the very end of it. So basically, so we're not going to like do the setup, but I'm going to dive straight into it. So as you know by now, Michaela, you know the Chaos God. So there's Khorne, god of battle. Kellogg's Khorne, yes. Nurgle, who is the god of disease.
Who's in the book that you had.
Yes, who's the god of disease and decay and plague and all that stuff.
And there's pus.
Bubbles.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've got to do that in a different paint.
Yes, Nurgle's Rot it's called, which is a terrific paint for all of those who've used it.
And there's intestines, and there's Bubbles the horse.
There is Bubbles the horse. One of the Chaos Knights that you've seen throughout the Age of Sigmarch month, she named Bubbles. I don't even know which one it is anymore. I don't think she remembers which one it is. So Tzeentch, who's the god of like deceit and change, and
he's the one who got lost.
No, that's the other one.
Oh,
yeah. So
he's just into tricks.
Yeah, he's into tricks and like magic and stuff like that. And then there is Slaanesh, who's the one who's on
OnlyFans.
Yes. Yes, he is the Prince of Pleasure, the God of Joy, the one who's all about, you know, pleasure, pain, and excess, and all the rest of that. Good stuff. So, the end of the old world is basically one planet with all the different races living on it until eventually the 4 Chaos Gods come together. They're not normally known for that. They're quite happy to fight amongst themselves.
I mean, that's perfect timing.
It's the same Chaos Gods from the Horus Heresy video, if those of you remember that. So, I'll try and explain. So, the same Chaos Gods that infected Horus and turned his brothers into demons and all the rest of that stuff.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, some of them got turned into demons.
Okay.
So, those are the same guys, effectively. I mean, Games Workshop's position on this is weird, to be honest with you, because they used to be guys go, oh no, they're different gods, and they're going, yeah, they're the same gods, and now you kind of ask them and they go, oh, fucking no. I don't even think they really know, to be honest with you. But
I feel this. There's a lot of death of the author happening with this lore.
You know, so the 4 Chaos Gods, they used to like grumble and fight and quarrel. They would have like massive, epic, titanic wars amongst themselves because that's what they do. But every so often they get together over a coffee and a cigarette and go, you know what, fighting each other's all well and good, but you know, humans are kind of fun. Let's get one of those to like launch a massive war against the rest of the world. Yes.
Now can see
great.
What they want is what they'll always be.
Anyway, so they all agree, like, you know, Nurgle's there having a cigarette and he's going, yeah, sounds like a good idea to me. So they all come together and they choose this guy called Archaon, who's been slowly climbing the career ladder of Chaos. You know, you start off as like an intern in the Chaos head office and eventually
like
your
the
CEO.
Apprentice, but the Chaos.
Yes. So and then eventually
being like, I like you. Just have lots of other people being like, yeah, my name's Bob. Yeah, I fucking love Chaos. I've been working in Chaos for 5 years now, and then they have like a task, and he's just like, oh no, I mean, it's too chaotic.
So what happens is obviously they find Archaon, and all 4 of them bless Archaon, and they give him the crown. Well, he finds this thing called the Crown of the Everchosen, so he becomes known as Archaon the Everchosen, and he unites all the various factions and tribes and the cults that worship chaos, forms this massive army that's in the millions, and he marches out this place called the Chaos Wastes, which is in like the north of the world, into the rest of the world, and just completely lays waste to it with him, the Beastmen, who are another faction as well.
What is this based on? Is this like Greek mythology, Roman mythology, Celtic mythology? What mythology are we basing this on?
Basically, this mythology is a bit of a mess, and as time went by and they expanded the old world, they started bringing in different bits, there's also stuff from Tolkien's own works that worked into it, so there's a reason there's orcs and goblins and high elves and dark elves and wood elves, oh my, and dwarves are in there as well, and the cultures are all there. The game from Games Workshop getting his blessing to expand on his IP in a way which he couldn't in his books, basically. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So, in any case, so there's massive invasion, and so there's things like the Empire of Man, which is humans, and they get completely destroyed. The vampires, Nagash, he returns because he's dead. He comes back to lead the vampires against Chaos, and what happens is all the various, factions and societies and all the elves reunite and they fight Chaos. But Chaos ultimately wins because of a treachery at the last minute, so the world is destroyed, and that seems like it's the end. But it's not the end. It's only the beginning, as always. That's kind of how it was done in the lore, but in a gameplay term, the actual story is a bit different. As you probably know, them toy soldiers are quite expensive.
Yes.
They are quite expensive. And the thing about Age of Sigmar is that it was meant to strip everything down to a slightly more easier to access level. So Warhammer Fantasy was quite expensive even at the time I was playing it, and
that was the one with the elves.
Yeah, that's the one with the elves. And it was all like regiments and square bases, but it kept scaling itself up, but the models weren't scaled up with it in terms of the unit sizes, so you could happily buy yourself 10 Empire Spearmen, for example, or 10 Chaos Warriors, but a practical number would be closer to 40 or 50 or 100.
So it's just the sizes that you bought weren't enough for like a practical game.
Effectively, yes.
It's like if you wanted to play chess and you could only buy the pawns, and then you had to buy like the knights separately. And
or you could buy half, if you could like buy a quarter, so you got 8 pawns, but you were buying your pawns in sets of 2 effectively.
Oh,
and then you had to buy each of your bishops separately, and each of your knights separately, and each...
So it's like EA Games?
Yes.
That's what it is.
And
okay,
then you
cool.
also need to buy the rulebook to play the game, and the book to play with your army as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
so you see how this gets...
Yeah, that gets pretty expensive pretty fast if you're new.
Yeah, exactly. So the buy-in price was enormous, and Games Workshop made the right move, in my opinion, and the opinions of some people and not so much others, and went, all right, so in order for this to work as a new concept, we kind of need to change the setting as well a little bit. And to be fair, the setting was getting quite fixed. So obviously you've got this one very fixed world, and unlike in, when you've got the Horus Heresy in Warhammer 40,000, it's a whole galaxy. So you can go off to different parts of it.
So this is all happening on one planet?
Yes.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah,
right.
So this is one planet, and there was a planet which over time obviously grew and evolved, and there was more to it they added, so they...
Yeah, but you still only have a finite space on a planet.
Exactly, whereas with the galaxy, you can pretty much go forever. So what they did is they effectively made it so that they could make it more open, so they could expand it more in the future. Mm-hmm. So in the new Age of Sigmar, after the destruction of the old world, they introduced the Mortal Realms up. They were the Shattered Realms, and then they became the Mortal Realms. And then there were the Realm Gate Wars, which were the first stage of this whole thing. And the idea of this very much was that this new dimension, this new world had been created by Sigmar, and Chaos came back with it, and things were going well, and then Chaos invaded, and they had these massive armies which were rampaging across the Mortal Realms, and they nearly destroyed it again. And then that's when he dropped the Stormcast Eternals in. And the Stormcast Eternals were... People can compare them to the Space Marines, because they do look quite similar. The Space Marines obviously a living, breathing human being, whereas...
In a suit.
In a suit, yeah.
That's like 8 foot tall.
Yes.
And I don't want him to kill me.
No, you do not. No, you do not. Whereas a Stormcast Eternal is actually the spirit of a deceased hero.
Like in Dark Souls?
Kind of. They are kind of undead, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Kind of, yes. So they are kind of undead, but then Sigmar takes their souls before they disappear into oblivion, and he reforges them, effectively gives them a second lease on life, and they become kind of immortal as well. So if they die on the battlefield, they just go back to Azur, which is Sigmar's realm, and he reforges them, they go back to the battlefield, and they can fight again, but each time they die and are reborn, they lose a bit more of their humanity. So it's more like Dark Souls 2. So are you with me so far then?
I think so.
Cool, brilliant. So just a quick recap. Mortal Realms, so old world destroyed, Sigmar comes back, new world is created.
With realms.
Chaos comes back, nearly destroys it. Sigmar sends his Stormcasts out to save the universe, basically. And slowly but surely, they start to retake certain parts of the 9 realms and everything that comes with it. Go on.
Why do the Chaos Gods care about this one planet with its realms when we know from Horus Heresy that they can just, like, be in a whole galaxy, fucking shit up and make Horus make bad decisions? So it's like if a volcano was like...
So a volcano...
I love being a volcano, I'm just there to be a volcano, but I can either be like pyroclastic flows or just all the lava. Okay, cool.
That works. Yeah, so exactly. But then obviously there's 4 of them, and they're all aware of each other as well. So as far as they're concerned, the realms, the mortal realms, are effectively a thorn in their side of just existence that won't go away. So for them, it's somewhat amusing that they're still there, and they're going, okay, how long is this going to last for? It's a bit like picking a scab. It's like going, how long is it going to take for this to come up? But on the other hand, it's also them going, all right, now they're just spiting me. I need to destroy it because this is just taking too long.
So is it because the realms were created, they're like, we want to break it?
In a manner
like
of
when
speaking,
they say don't, like on a train, you know, when it's like the emergency button and it's like, you will be prosecuted if you press the button, and you're like, I kind of want to press the button. I know I shouldn't, but I want to press the button. And they're like, we're fucking pressing the button. Is it like that?
Yes, it is like pressing the button you're not supposed to press. In the old world, obviously, there were other things such as Nagash, like I said, and there were the orcs as well, and they're 2 orcs, Gork and Mork, who were brutally cunning and cunningly brutal. I know. And they all originally teamed up with Sigmar, but then eventually all those gods start to reappear in this universe. It's actually weird. I don't think, and as a side note, a lot of the named characters that have models, you're right.
I shivered.
Okay, a lot of the named characters who have models in this game didn't actually die, so they were there in old Warhammer Fantasy, and then in Age of Sigmar they just came back. And it was like, oh, we're still alive. And you go, it's been like thousands of years. How are you still alive? We are. So there's guys like the Glotkin, for example, who like get turned to dust they're like Nurgle people. They get turned to dust in one of the books.
There's just too many people in this thing.
There are 2.
Why are there always so many people? Why can't you just have like your few dudes? You know, and the rest of them can be in the ensemble tap dancing and have like their one line. Why?
Because it's not a show.
Could you imagine like trying to adapt these stories into a musical? You'd have to cut so much shit. It'd be like, him, not important, but he is important in this bit. And it's like, we're not covering that in the musical. No, go away.
The only way it would work is because you got to remember.
You don't have sequels in musicals. This is why Lord of the Rings was 3 fucking hours.
Yeah, this is where we go.
Raimgate Wars is
the realm. Yes, it is. The Realm Gate Wars is where Sigmar starts to retake the mortal realms, and Chaos is pushed back to the limits, which is good. Peace and prosperity. It seems to be on the horizon. Then Nagash wakes up and realizes that yes, Nagash has been asleep since the destruction of the old world, basically.
Why has he been asleep?
Because when the world was destroyed, it was a massive traumatic, magical backlash that basically obliterated him for a little while, and then he was basically recovering from that.
Was he had PTSD?
Effectively, yeah. For the Lord of the Undead, he is a surprisingly flimsy dude.
Where was he?
He was just asleep in the void.
In a bed?
I don't know, I assume like floating or something. Get onto that in a second.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So he has a coughing cigarette, opens up his windows, looks outside and sees that Sigmar's got all the souls of the undead now fighting for him.
And he's annoyed.
He's very annoyed because he's going,
but
yeah, the undead is my
there.
thing. Exactly. So Sigmar's going, well, you weren't there, so all these souls were just fair game. So Nagash goes, enough of that. Those souls belong to me. So they start a massive war. So the Grand Alliance of Death comes into its own because Nagash is back. And that's when
who goes to the Grand Alliance of Death? Are they just like some random souls who were like, you know what, I was just moonlighting until Nagash came back?
So Grand Alliance Death is made up largely of things like vampires, the undead, because you've got to remember necromancers and necromancy. Necromancy came...
Are there humans in this universe?
Yeah, most of these people are humans.
Okay.
But they're magical humans. So most of them have so far been magicians and magic users, and it's complicated. I told you it's complicated. And the thing about Age of Sigmar...
That's a Horus Heresy.
Yeah, Horus Heresy was a story. This is more like the setup of a universe.
Okay.
I know, yeah, also this is technically like the same. It's all the rest of that stuff. Yeah, there's tree spirits. They're now fighting both chaos and death, and there's also the orcs under Gork and Mork. And the thing about destruction is they're just kind of there doing their own thing, so they're just going to come in occasionally and just ruin people's shit. And that's kind of where we've gotten to now. And that's where Age of Sigmar kind of, thankfully, mercifully, as I'm sure you'll be glad to hear, has kind of reached. So it's at the point now where the Soul Wars is starting to wind down, but this new thing is happening called the Broken Realms, where all the various parts of the different alliances are starting to reevaluate their loyalties. So Chaos is still pretty solid. Death is... There's some rumblings within the ranks of the undead, because Nagash can't be everywhere at once, so he's got these guys called the Mortarchs, like the Matriarchs or the Patriarchs or the Monarchs or whatever you want to call them. And they're all starting to go, well, we're all pretty powerful and we don't necessarily need Nagash, so why don't we get a new guy in charge? But anyway, that's just their thing. And in the Grand Lines of Order, there's someone called Marathi, and she's really powerful, and she's like Dark Elf sorceress, and she's thinking of, going her own way.
Oh, is that Fosca?
Do you know what? They're pretty closely related. As a side note, Fosca, if you go back and watch my Cities of Sigmar video, Fosca is the sorceress that I painted in that. That's her name now.
I named her Fosca after Fosca in Passion by Stephen Sondheim.
Indeed, indeed. And so that's kind of where Age of Sigmar is now. So unlike the Horus Heresy, which is like a quite concise story, Age of Sigmar is more like the end of one world and the start of a new one. And to get back to the models thing, so the Stormcards Tunnel were a new range that came out for that. They were a brand new army, and it was a way of basically reorganizing all of the various factions from the old fantasy and then introducing new ones and removing some old ones to make new models and more interesting things, to create a system and a game that was easy to get into, has some slightly less plain generic models by making them all have a bit more personality and a bit more character, and then create a slightly more open and easier to access game on the whole. Okay? So yes. So, that's Age of Sigmar. And all sorts. So Michaela, what do you think?
I'm really confused. Okay, right. So there was the Gods of Chaos.
Yes.
And there was Nurgabur.
Yeah.
And then Sigmar. And then Sigmar was like, we're gonna get these dudes and make them the people, the spirit people. And the Gods of Chaos were like, we want to break everything. And Nurgabur was like asleep. And then Nagash woke up and was annoyed. And so got some vampires and orcs and some skeletons. And now it's slightly more fine than it was, but it's not anymore.
Basically.
Why is Deathman so angry? Why can't he just be like, hey, I get it. There were some souls. You wanted to do some good in the world. Let's have a meeting, sit down and chat.
Here's the thing about Nagash, is that he's really, really insecure.
Well, then he needs to go to a therapist and sort that out. Pissed off at Nagash Tagine.
So here's the thing about Nagash.
He doesn't deserve to be a Moroccan dish. He doesn't deserve it.
So here's the thing about Nagash. When Nagash came back, he said to Sigmar, quite reasonably in some cases, good show with the souls you got there.
So if he's saying good show, why is he getting angry?
Because this is the next thing, is that they said, good show, can I have them back? And Sigmar said, well, they're kind of my army now, and I've made a bit more than what you were going to do with them. And that's why he got angry.
Okay, right, okay, that explains everything a bit more. So what they needed to do is they needed to come up with a compromise. They needed to ask some open questions, figure out how they could sort it out. Because it could have been, because an army is split into battalions or some shit, right? So it could have been that it could be like, okay, how about if I give you these guys and I keep these guys, so I can just keep the Chaos Warriors at bay, Sorcerer guy and OnlyFans guy and Nurgle and Kellogg's. Right. Okay, right. So, okay. My confusion aside, I like that the Chaos Gods are back. I like that they have names now. That makes me happy. I like that we know
I feel
who
like
those feckers are.
So, that is me drunkenly explaining and failing somewhat to explain Age of Sigmar to Michaela here.
Mauer.
Sigmar or Sigmar.
Oh, your foot is really warm.
So,
Sorry.
so, let me know what you thought below. Is there things that I missed out? Is there more stuff to be said about Age of Sigmar? And actually, as a side note, guys, tell me, who misses fantasy? I don't. I really don't.
I feel like fantasy is way more confusing than... Like, Horus Heresy was long, but I got it. And even though there were bits where it's like, this isn't really good writing or world building or whatever, and doesn't really make much sense character-wise, I got where they were going. I feel like with fantasy, they didn't have an idea for it because it was like, let's just put all the fantasy thing in. Let's have like vampires and goblins and no.
Do you know what you're pretty much
Whereas I feel like
they were able to like actually create a story. Whereas with fantasy, they kind of had this world which they then kind of like dumped the players in. It was very more of a sandbox than an actual story. And there was lots of backstory.
Yeah.
There was lots of backstory, but it was never story driven.
But
Whereas Age of Sigmar is story driven, the same way the Horus Heresy is story driven. But the contemporary 40k playground is not story driven, it's very much a sandbox with a bit of story which is coming in more strongly now because the Heresy was so popular. And the old fantasy game was a sandbox which wasn't story driven. Thank you, Michaela. Did you learn something new?
Yes.
Good. So, thank you all very much for watching, and thank you for joining us on this continued expansion of Age of Sigmar. So, leave your comments below what you thought, like, subscribe, all that good YouTube silly stuff. I try to, get my videos out on Wednesdays and Fridays, as you guys should know by now. I'm not sure what day this video is going out on, but it's one of those two. But in any case, thank you all very much for watching. Goodbye, and have a lovely day.
Bye.
Michaela Benison.
Age of Sigmar. Age of Sigmar. There's a guy called Kellogg's, and he is a chaos god. And then there's also, what's the other guy? I can't remember. Nagash. He's angry in his gash. And there was a guy called Nagesh, or Ganache, or Garnish.
Or what, sorry?
I don't know.
What was his name again?
Nagoosh.
Nagash.
Moussaka. Some kind of Moroccan dish.